Good morning. Welcome to the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy's live weekly broadcast. I'm Roberta Oster, the Communications Director. Our show, Virginia Interfaith Center Live, brings you the latest news and resources from policy and faith experts, legislators, and community leaders. And you are part of the broadcast. You can ask questions during the show. Just write them on our Facebook and Twitter feeds. During these difficult times dealing with COVID-19, our program will focus on economic, racial, social, and environmental justice issues here in Virginia. We will keep you informed and up to date and keep our elected officials accountable. We will also share opportunities for you to get involved in our work advancing social justice and helping our neighbors. Today, we will address the legislative victories and defeats during this past General Assembly session. I'm pleased to introduce our guests, Benjamin Hoyne, our Policy Director at Virginia Interfaith Center, Kendyl Crawford, who's Director of Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, and our Executive Director, Kim Bobo. And Kim will serve as our moderator. Kim?
Good morning. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Normally, we would be doing wrap-up sessions all across the Commonwealth in the month of May. But obviously we can't do that. And so we've decided to devote this show to really looking at the priorities that we worked on during the General Assembly. So we're going to start out with the issues where Virginia Interfaith Center really was a leader on the issues, meaning we recruited the sponsors, we drafted legislation, we really helped make it go through. Every one of you helped lobby by sending emails or calls or letters. We worked on it during the Day for All People. We just made this stuff happen. And there's two areas where that is just really extraordinarily clear. One is wage theft and the other is environmental justice. So Benjamin, I'm going to ask you to describe really the leadership roles and frankly, all the amazing bills that passed in terms of wage theft. And would you also just explain what is wage theft exactly?
Sure. And thanks, Kim and Roberta, for having me on today. And thanks to all you out there that are watching. So wage theft is an issue that those who are familiar with the Virginia Interfaith Center are well aware of. We've been working on it for many years. Kim Bobo is a national, international known leader in wage theft and literally wrote the book on wage theft. But in general, wage theft is any time that an employee or worker is not paid money that they're owed, money they earned on the job. And so we see that in a variety of ways. We can see that internally, taxes not being taken out, or money taken out for tools or uniforms or other things that it shouldn't be taken out. So there's a variety of ways for workers to be subjected to wage theft in Virginia and elsewhere. And thankfully, we were able to pass a whole host of great worker protection bills this year. Now, I'll highlight kind of some of the three or four that we really were on first and foremost, and then there's some additional bills that the governor put forward and other patrons put forward that we supported in general. One of the biggest issues in terms of wage theft is that you can't really hire a lawyer, at least a lawyer can't get paid to take your case other than getting paid out of the missing wages that you're owed. So lawyers don't usually take these cases because if a worker's owed $500 or $1,000 by an employer, that's the only amount of money that's available to both the worker and a lawyer in a wage theft case. And so thankfully, we've been working for a number of years. We've had Republican patrons, Democratic patrons. This year we had Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy and Senator Adam Eben, who were both wonderful patrons on this bill. We finally got a private cause of action or private right of action for wage theft cases, and that'll start July 1st. And so what that means is that if you're a worker and you've been cheated out of wages, $500, $5,000, what have you, you can now, or starting July 1, you'll be able to hire a lawyer and they'll be able to get paid reasonable attorney fees, kind of general attorney fees to take your case so that they are not paid out of your missing wages. So that's a really great protection for workers. It's kind of bringing the private bar, the private lawyers into the case and not putting the onus on the state government to police that. And then a couple of the other ways that we've done that have been to kind of up the ante for the state, really through the Department of Labor and Industry or DOLI, DOLI, to increase their enforcement capabilities. Right now in Virginia, if you were a victim of a wage theft case and you actually called the state, it's not a protected whistleblower status like filing an unemployment insurance claim or workers' comp claim would be. So if you were to call in the state and file a wage theft complaint, you actually could be fired for that. And so starting July 1, that will go away. Additionally, we established some increased capability for DOLI to kind of maximize their efficiency. And so that if they see they get one case from an employer, they can then look at other employees at that workplace to see if wage theft is happening to them. Additionally, some other ways that you can be a victim of wage theft is to be paid below minimum wage, frankly. We strongly believe that all workers deserve at least minimum wage, and Kim will talk a little bit later about the effort to increase the minimum wage for all workers in Virginia. But there have been a host of workers that have been excluded from earning the minimum wage in Virginia. And at the Virginia Interfaith Center, we've been working for a number of years on removing those exemptions. And so last year, you might recall that shoeshine boys and newsboys and other historical Jim Crow era exemptions to the minimum wage were removed. This year, we were able to get the exemption for peace workers removed, thanks to Senator Janet Howell, who was a great patron on that. And then there's a host of other bills, wage theft bills that, frankly, the governor put forward and had patrons working on, and through his misclassification task force. Misclassification is when a worker is classified as an independent contractor when in reality they should be an employee. And so there's a host of bills on misclassification that now provide kind of penalties for businesses that are inappropriately classifying people as misclassification. So, and then most importantly, enforcement at the state. We had 20 enforcement agents 10 years ago before the last recession. That was cut down to 3 enforcement agents at DOLI, wage theft enforcement agents, and thanks to Delegate Paul Krizik, who really championed additional wage theft staff. They've actually added 10 wage theft enforcement staff that'll be in the new budget coming forward. So that kind of, in a long way, summarizes a host of the wage theft bills that we were working on and many others were working on as well.
Hey, Benjamin, thank you so much. You know, it sounds like we really have got things going the right direction in Virginia to try and see if we can stop this heinous crime of wage theft that unfortunately occurs with lots of low-wage workers. So we're going to turn now to Kendyl Crawford, who directs our environmental work. Kendyl, tell us about Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, and then tell us about the incredible work you did and we did on environmental justice.
Of course. So again, my name is Kendyl Crawford. I'm the director of Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. We are a program of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We also are an affiliate of National Interfaith Power and Light. We're the Virginia affiliate. You know, we are people of faith collaborating to grow healthy communities and advance climate justice through education, advocacy, and worship. And so just very excited to be here today talking about some of our collective victories during the General Assembly session. So getting right to what Kim asked me to talk about is environmental justice. First of all, you know, what is environmental justice? When you're talking about environmental justice, you're talking about the fair treatment and meaningful involvement, you know, of everyone. No matter race, color, national origin, income, faith, disability. And so we're talking about that fair treatment when it comes to the development, implementation, and enforcement of all environmental policies, laws, and safeguards. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about environmental justice. And unfortunately, normally, which is the case, when you're talking about environmental justice, you're normally talking about environmental injustice, because this term also refers to the disproportionate burdens of pollution and the lack of environmental benefits often seen in low-income communities and communities of color. So getting to what happened during this past General Assembly session, some really exciting things. First of all, we were able to work in a leadership role with the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative on 2 bills that passed. So the first one was codifying the Virginia Environmental Justice Council. So this council was initially started under our past governor, Governor McAuliffe. And so if you're interested in finding out more about the work of the council, you can always kind of Google Virginia Secretary of Natural Resources and Environmental Justice Council. If you do that, you will find the report recommendations that they released last year. And basically the overall goal of this council is just to provide recommendations as to how Virginia can be a more inclusive, a more just state in terms of thinking about our environmental benefits and our environmental burdens. So anyway, what did the bill do this year? So the Environmental Justice Council Codification Bill was chief patroned by Delegates Charnel Herring and also Senator Mamie Locke. And so that bill codified the Environmental Justice Council. So that's very exciting. So now it doesn't matter who's in the governor's mansion, that Virginia will have a established council to keep providing these recommendations and much needed assistance to make sure that our state keeps moving forward. So one quick thing before I move on to our next bill, I would just like to make a quick announcement that if you are interested, if you know of someone who is very interested in the issue of environmental justice, you think would be a good voice to be on that council, because we were able to get it codified, the council is now looking for new members. And so I really want to get the word out to encourage folks to apply to be on the Environmental Justice Council. And we're looking for, or rather, the administration is looking for all different types of people. So whether you're a member of a community, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're in a faith organization, whether you're a member of industry, please consider applying. And if you have any questions, I don't mind, I don't mind answering them for you. So feel free to reach out to me. So that's our first bill, codifying the Environmental Justice Council. And then our second bill, which is even more exciting, is the Virginia Environmental Justice Act. And again, both of these passed. The Virginia Environmental Justice Act, our chief patrons were Delegate Keem on the House side, and then Senator Hashmi on the Senate side. The exciting thing about the Virginia Environmental Justice Act is basically that now we have an officially codified position, an official policy of the Commonwealth that says, hey, it is the role of Virginia to promote environmental justice and to ensure that it is carried out throughout the state. So that's really exciting. And in addition to kind of getting that policy statement included into Virginia Code, we also have gotten a really great set of baseline definitions in the code as well that talk about, what is environmental justice, what is fair treatment, what is an environmental justice community, what does it mean to be meaningfully involved. So we were able to get not just the policy, but the definitions. And as kind of a bonus, we also were able to get some language in the budget that creates an interagency working group on environmental justice. So this would actually act to bring many different agencies together to start to think about, hey, what is it that we can do to ensure that environmental justice is moving forward, and how much will it cost? So that's really an exciting and big first step for the state of Virginia, and it puts us among the leaders in the nation in terms of making strides towards environmental justice.
So Kendyl, are you saying that now we're going to be perfect on environmental justice issues in Virginia?
Can you? No.
No, probably not, huh? So there's still work. There will still be work to do. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, there is so much work to be done, and I feel like I could spend the rest of the time that we have just talking about all of the many more steps that we need to take. For instance, one of the things that that was initially a part of the Virginia Environmental Justice Act, but didn't make it all the way through the process. We're just kind of outlining more specific responsibilities in terms of, what we really want to see agencies doing. For example, items like, public comment periods, items like permitting, citing decisions. So we still need to kind of break it down to really outline exactly what our expectations are, to make sure that people are getting that access to a healthy, clean, sustainable, equitable environment.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your leadership on this, Kendyl. And everybody should email her if you want Kendyl to be on that Environmental Justice Council. All right. So we're going to turn now. A lot of our work is done in coalition, right? It's not just us. But we really mobilize the faith community often on key issues in partnership with other organizations. So we want to talk about some of the things that we're most excited about that we were a part of that actually passed. So the first is minimum wage. We were part of the effort to raise the minimum wage, and we're excited that Virginia has chosen to go ahead and raise the minimum wage. It's a little bit complicated how we're doing it, but by May 1st, we'll see the first bump up, which will be to $9.50 an hour. Then by the beginning of the following year, so 2022, we'll be up to $11. By the beginning of 2023, we'll be up to $12. Then we take a little pause and we have a study on regionalism and whether we need to think about different minimum wages for different parts of the country. And then there'll be a vote on that. And presumably, if things don't get changed out of that study, then we will go up to $13.50 an hour by January 1, 2025, and $15 by January 1, 26. So this bill gets us to $15 an hour. It does also remove the exemption on piecework, which we had a separate bill on. It removes the domestic worker exemption on minimum wage. So it does a couple other good things. There were a couple things we weren't happy about in the bill. One is that it has a training wage. We are concerned about that. And the training wage is basically 75% of the minimum wage for the first 90 days. Now, again, that doesn't sound so bad if people actually get up, but sometimes we've seen in other states that employers will abuse this and basically fire people after 89 days so that they can keep people at that training wage. So again, we're going to watch that. We're concerned about it. We also are very concerned that the bill continues to exempt farm workers. Now, we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's a huge problem for us. Farm workers are essential workers. They deserve the minimum wage. And so we had tried to get that exemption removed, and we were not able to. But with those minor problems, it is overall an incredibly important step forward for low-income workers in Virginia. One of the stats I saw was that if we take the minimum wage to $15 an hour, half of African-American women in Virginia will get a raise. right? So this affects huge numbers of people, and often people who've been excluded and taken advantage of in our society. So again, this is a great thing. The other one that we are so thrilled about is a comprehensive predatory lending reform bill. This is something that the Virginia Interfaith Center and religious leaders across the state really championed for way before my time at Virginia Interfaith Center. So we've been working on this for a long, long time. The Virginia Poverty Law Center really led the way on crafting this bill, recruiting the sponsors, and then we really came in with, people all over the state who cared about this issue. So super excited about the predatory lending. So Lauren is asking a question, what's going to be the focus of our work next year? So we're going to get to that in a minute, at least a couple of the priorities for next year. And we have added a lot of work during COVID, but I want to continue with our wrap up from this year. So Ben, we worked on a couple of immigration issues. Can you talk about those issues that we worked in coalition on?
Yeah, and I just want to echo the comments about working in coalition and how important it is to have key partners. And in fact, on the first bill I mentioned, the private right of action, I neglected to mention key partners with the carpenters and the building trades and other folks. So there's been a lot of great coalition partners on some of our bills. And for some of our bills to kind of make Virginia more welcoming to immigrants also had broad coalitions that were really great. So the first bill that we've been working for a number of years that other groups have been really leading the efforts for a number of years is to get access to driver's licenses or access to driving privileges regardless of your immigration status. So, the Virginia Interfaith Center, we're part of the Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights, VICPP, additionally part of the Drive Virginia Forward Coalition, which has, both those groups have a whole host of different organizations involved that have been working on this legislation for a number of years. We were hopeful to get a driver's license for all Virginians. It actually ended up, the bill that passed was a driving privilege card, which is not quite the same. Some big concerns on that are the ability for the federal government, ICE, et cetera, to kind of access database, in essence, creating a database of undocumented immigrants. So we're concerned about that. There have been some privacy protections added to the bill to make it a bit better. We'll have to see how that turns out. But all in all, it's a great victory for immigrants in Virginia and really for all Virginians. As we talk about public safety, allowing all Virginians to take a road test, to take a vision test, to take a written test. I think it's imperative for all of us to have safe drivers on the road, and this goes a long way to that. Additionally, another bill that the Virginia Interfaith Center and other groups have worked on for a long time is in-state tuition, allowing in-state tuition regardless of immigration status. Again, provided you meet residency requirements typical of other folks in Virginia that are going to in-state colleges and universities. So really important in places like Northern Virginia for both community colleges and four-year college, also in Richmond, Hampton Roads, and the Shenandoah Valley and some other places. So that's another great bill that will make Virginia more welcoming to all Virginians. And similar coalition members, again, many of the partners of the Virginia Coalition of Immigrant Rights, a lot of the undocumented student groups were really important. NACASEC, a group up in Northern Virginia, and many others. So kudos to everyone that worked on those two bills.
And we're going to turn again to Kendyl to talk about the work on energy burden that, again, was a coalition effort. Kendyl?
Yeah, so what the heck is energy burden? So energy burden is, if you think about a household, think about the income of that household. If this household is spending 6% or more on energy costs, so that's, like electricity bills, then that household is considered to have a high energy burden. And so what it comes down to, we don't want folks to have to choose between paying electricity bills and rent, or paying between electricity bills and being able to get your prescriptions. So we're really trying to make sure that we are decreasing the energy burden on Virginia families. So one of the bills that passed this year was called the Clean Energy and Community Flood Preparedness Act. And so what was really exciting about this is that, it does two things, basically. Well, actually three. So the first thing it does is join Virginia on to RGGI, which stands for the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which caps carbon pollution from our power plants. So that's number one. The next thing that it does is that it creates a fund. And so this fund is going to be used for low-income energy efficiency programs. So that's really great and helps to lower energy burden on low-income families. And the last thing that this bill does is that it also creates a Virginia Community Flood Preparedness Fund. And that is a low-interest loan program also that is aimed to helping low-income communities adapt to the struggle of rising sea levels that we're already seeing here in Virginia. So that's one of the really exciting pieces of legislation that passed that we supported to help decrease energy burden on Virginia families.
Awesome. So again, these were all coalition efforts, but where we played a really, we were engaged, we were part of the strategy, we were active, we had people testifying, we were, particularly engaging the faith community. Now, one of our listeners just asked, have any of these bills been adjusted because of COVID? And yes, two of the bills that we worked on in this category, the timeline on them was changed. So the minimum wage was originally supposed to start January 1, and the governor amended it to have it start May 1 of 2021 in terms of the first increase on the minimum wage. Because concern about small businesses and the challenges they're facing right now. The other one was the predatory lending. That date actually got moved up to start sooner. It was originally scheduled to start July 1 of 2021, but it's going to start January 1 of 2021 because I think people believe that so many families are going to be struggling to make ends meet, that they're going to go to some of these lenders. And so to have the reforms in place now is really important. So again, yes, some of the dates have gotten changed because of COVID. Now we're going to talk briefly about 4 bills that weren't major efforts for us, but we were involved in testifying and supporting them, and they're so in line with our values of making Virginia more welcoming, more equitable, more fair. So Ben, talk about a couple of them, and then Kendall's going to talk about a couple of them. Benjamin.
Yeah, and so just a bill that I was able to testify on and support, created an Office of New Americans, I think from Delegate Kathy Tran and Senator Ghazal Hashmi, that passed. And that is to create a government office, within the state to welcome immigrants, to kind of provide resources and other ways to kind of welcome immigrants into Virginia. Make sure that there's materials that are available in accessible languages and other things. So that was one. Another bill, kind of known as a de-ICE bill, or removing ICE from jails. My colleague Jace Hatcher, who also really led the Virginia Interfaith Center efforts on the driver's licenses, the driver's privilege card effort, she was supporting these bills. And what this does is it removes a requirement that jails ascertain the citizenship of anyone that comes into their control. So the hope is that the jails will not then report citizenship to the federal government, to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So those 2 bills did pass.
Great. And then Kendyl.
And 2 other bills that passed that we were very excited about. So I was able to testify in support of creating a brand new position here in the Commonwealth. It's kind of on the level of the governor's secretariats. And so this position is called the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And so basically it is what it sounds like. The position was established to really make sure that we have inclusive practices across state government, and that, of course, kind of the historic and systemic inequities are getting addressed. So what that will look like is, creating strategic plans, making sure that this role is really a facilitator to get feedback and to implement those suggestions. And so currently, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director is Dr. Janice Underwood. And one real quick thing about her role. So before the coronavirus pandemic hit, there was a series of listening sessions going on across the Commonwealth. Unfortunately, these, of course, have been put on pause, but as we're moving forward, that's something for folks to continue to look out for, because I know that we were right in the middle of having those listening sessions across the Commonwealth, which would be wonderful for folks out there to know about and also to participate in. And one of the last bills that we were very excited to support and that also passed was the creation of a commission to study slavery. And so this bill was introduced by Delegate McQuinn, and essentially that one's similar to the last one. It is what it sounds like. It studies the current impact of the inequalities that have happened due to slavery in Virginia. And it requires that a report would be submitted in 2 years, I believe, or submit a report annually. So that's two other things that we were excited to support.
Yes, these bills are really part of our commitment to trying to make Virginia a more equitable and fair state. And we believe that all these bills help us move that direction. Unfortunately, not everything we worked on this year passed. And so I want to talk about three bills three efforts that we were disappointed about, but we'll be back. So first, one of our top priorities this year was trying to get a paid sick day standard. I'm sure if you are a subscriber to our email action alerts, you probably sent an email or made a call or made a visit about this issue. We were trying to get a standard in Virginia whereby every worker would get 5 paid sick days. The bill we eventually ended up with after many configurations was a bill that would require employers with 15 or more workers to provide 5 paid sick days a year, and those with less than that to provide 24 hours of unpaid time, so 3 days of unpaid time. But at least you'd be able to take the time off without losing your job, and the either paid or unpaid could be taken not just for yourself, but to care for a sick family member. This, in light of the coronavirus, certainly seems like a very modest proposal. But despite that, it became very controversial in the Virginia General Assembly. We did get a bill initially through both the House and the Senate. It then went to conference committee. The conference committee report, which was a very good bill at that point, got through the House of Representatives and got killed on the floor of the Senate. It got what's called pass by, which at the end of a session means it's really killing it. It became, every single legislator knew about the bill, so we'd done a lot of work on it, but not everyone was yet convinced that we needed that kind of standard. And so we will be working on that in the coming General Assembly. We had fabulous patrons, Delegate Guzman in the House and Senator Favola in the Senate. I know they are both committed to working on it again this year. So we came very close, as Senator Favola said. We got 80% of the way there, but we didn't get it quite across the finish line. So we got to make that happen because workers still need a paid sick day standard. Benjamin, I want you to talk about the farm worker exemption. I mentioned it earlier, but I think this is one we want to keep working on.
Yeah, and this one really, again, ties into the wage theft that we've been talking about from the beginning, when your folks are paid below minimum wage. And again, everyone deserves at least minimum wage, and none more so than essential workers, folks that are putting their lives on the line right now to put food on our table, from the farms or at grocery stores or in healthcare facilities, what have you. But I'd be remiss, just taking a step back, if I didn't mention our previous great wage theft patrons, also the patrons of our bills to strengthen the Department of Labor and Industry this year, Senator Lionel Spruill and Delegate Sia Price. Both have done historical work on wage theft. So, but as far as the farm worker exemption specifically, this actually was introduced by Delegate Elizabeth Guzman in the House, but it was quickly rolled into the broader minimum wage bill in the House from Delegate Juwan Ward. And so in the House, it never got a hearing on its own. But when there were negotiations between the House and the Senate on what the final minimum wage compromise bill would look like, ourselves, Legal Aid Justice Center, and others really were advocating to remove the exemption for farm workers. So this allows farm workers in Virginia to be paid under $7.25, and we know there's farm workers right now in Virginia being paid $5 an hour and less. So now that many of the other exemptions, we mentioned piecework, domestic work, shoeshine boys, micro businesses, et cetera, have been removed. But the farm workers is one of the big ones that remain. So certainly we'll be working on this throughout this year and into next year to try to finally get some justice for those folks that are working hard every day, putting their health and their lives on the line to bring food for all of us. So we can't stress strongly enough that they deserve at a minimum wage.
All right. And then the last bill that we worked on, Kendyl, can you talk about this one that did not pass, but again, we'll be back.
Excuse me. So this one was, it was called the Fair Energy Bills Act. And again, we supported it because it addresses the issue of energy burden. Right now in Virginia, there have been, hundreds of millions of dollars of overcharges by our electricity monopoly, Dominion Virginia Power. And so this bill really aimed to just kind of restore oversight from our State Corporation Commission, or the SCC. So this one was particularly important during this past session because we have basically like a rate evaluation, a rate review coming up next year. And so if this bill had passed, we really could have seen the SCC adjusting rates, potentially ordering some refunds for all of us, electricity bill payers across Virginia. But unfortunately, this one did not pass. And actually, it was particularly painful because it died by one vote in Senate Commerce and Labor Committee. But of course, this means that we're not going to give up on this. There is another rate review scheduled after next year, and so we'll just keep on fighting, and we're going to keep on supporting the patrons of this bill. Delegate Jay Jones was the chief patron, and the chief co-patron was Delegate Lee Ware. So this was a really exciting bipartisan effort, and it would have benefited everyone in Virginia. Of course, most of everyone in Virginia, from low-income families to businesses, really anyone who could benefit from lower electricity bills. And of course, Dominion, they should get a fair shake, but we also deserve a fair shake too. And so that's what the bill was about, just having fair energy bills for all of us.
Do you have an upcoming show with Jay Jones?
Yes. Actually, next week, next Thursday, May 14th, same time, same place, we will have Delegate Jay Jones on, and we will be talking more in depth about the issue of energy burden, who it affects, and why it's important that we, make sure that we're raising awareness of this issue and decreasing the burden on Virginia families.
So you can see some of the things that didn't happen this year, we're going to be working on going forward. So you can learn more about the energy burden next Thursday. You can also sign our petition in support of paid sick days. This is, you can click on it in the link in Facebook. Here's the link as well. You can go to our website. You can learn more about it. And we will be doing more information and more shows on this. So that really is our legislative roundup for the 2020 General Assembly. I really want to thank you for joining us today. And frankly, thank you for all the work that you did throughout the General Assembly, which really lasted. It started in early January, and then we weren't really done. We were still working until April 22nd. So, and you all were responding and doing emails and calls and visits and letters, and that's why we were able to be effective on this. We are a grassroots advocacy organization, and that means your involvement is really important and makes the difference. So thank you for your work. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you at our 5 o'clock show if you want to join us in Spanish and hear the same thing. And join us next week with Delegate Jay Jones. Thank you so much.